everyone. Welcome to the second season of the PAiD Free Professional Development Workshops for Artists. We're really excited to be back with a new season of workshops with some really amazing topics and amazing presenters. And we are going to give it just maybe 2 more minutes for folks to get logged in, and then I'll begin tonight's session. But welcome, and we're looking forward to tonight's conversation. Okay, we have a good amount of attendees coming in. I know that there are probably going to be some additional folks filtering in, but we have some intro comments, some notes, some housekeeping things. So I think we can dive into those as folks get logged in. So feel free to go to the next slide, Summer. Okay, so my name is Emily Womack with Dyson and Womack. We are work partners with LA County Arts and Culture in realizing the PAiD program, Public Artists in Development. We're going to share a little bit more about that in a moment. My colleague Summer Levitt, who is also on the call, is going to share a little bit more about the program itself. Before we jump into the topic for tonight, we are talking about turning setbacks into strengths, a very corporate kind of sounding name, I realize, for actually a really honest and real topic. And we're really excited to have Susan Logoreci here with us tonight. She is going to be sharing about her practice, her experience in this field. I also want to highlight that this session is going to be recorded, as all of our workshops are, and that eventual recording will be housed and hosted on the LA County PAiD website in the coming months. We won't do that till after all the workshops for this second cycle are done. But if you've participated tonight, once we have all of those workshops up again for viewership, we will send everyone an email who's participated to let you know if you ever want to go back, revisit a topic. You can also see all of the recordings from the first cycle of workshops. I believe there's 16 or so. It's a really robust suite of workshops that you can already engage with. If you joined us previously, welcome back. If this is your first one, really a sincere welcome for joining us tonight. And so after the talk, we will then also have a Q&A. So that's one thing. If you are here tonight, rather than listening to it in the future, you have a chance to ask your questions directly to us, to a representative from LA County Arts and Culture who will join us for the Q&A, and of course to our guest speaker, Susan. You don't need to hold on to your questions till the end. If you see at the bottom or top, however you're logged into Zoom, there is a little button called Q&A. Sometimes it's hidden under the More symbol with the 3 dots. It's different from your chat. So if you can locate that Q&A tab, that is where we'll be going through the questions that come up. And you are absolutely welcome to put those questions in at any point. You don't need to wait until the end. Pop them in while you're talking, while we're doing the presentation. We may pull some in during the talk. We may wait till the end, but don't feel like you need to worry about losing your question. Just as it comes up, pop it into the chat or to the Q&A. Okay, next slide, please. As we open all of our sessions with LA County, we want to start with the LA County Land Acknowledgement. The County of Los Angeles recognizes that we occupy land originally and still inhabited and cared for by the Tongva, Tataviam, Serrano, Kizh, and Chumash peoples. We honor and pay respect to their elders and descendants, past, present, and emerging, as they continue their stewardship of these lands and waters. We'll leave it up for a moment for folks to continue reading. Thank you, Summer. Turn it over to you.
Yeah, thanks. My name is Summer Levitt. I am the studio manager at Dyson and Womack. I'm going to share a little bit about the PAiD program. The PAiD program is a multi-year initiative funded by the Mellon Foundation that aims to advance the career growth and economic empowerment of underrepresented artists in LA County. One of the main goals of the program is to address historical barriers that artists face when trying to enter public art and also deal with wider challenges that artists may encounter throughout their careers. The program is made up of multiple components. The Artist Council, the first cycle was held across 2024 and 2025, and we are now in the middle of cycle 2. It is a cohort of 8 selected artists that are commissioned to engage in policy discussions to make recommendations to the county. And they also get to create temporary public artworks that will be shown across LA County. If you'd like to see projects from the previous cycle, they are on Dyson and Womack's website where you can take a look, and you can also stay tuned for information for cycle 2's artist projects that are going to be shown across the city in March and April of this year. The next section of the program is the apprenticeship. We have 2 cycles of that as well, and we are currently on cycle 1. It is a cohort of artists who have never shown a public art project or completed a civic artwork, and so they will engage in mentorship and training to complete their public art commission. And then we also have the professional development workshops like this one. It is a series of free workshops for artists that are designed to provide valuable skills and resources to artists who are at all stages of their careers as artists. And so this workshop that you're at now is the first of the series. There will be about 10 more over the next few months, and you can stay tuned for more info on our website as well. And we'll be putting the link in the chat as well for RSVPing to the coming workshops. And then finally, we have the website for the PAiD program. It will be run by the county, and it is a resource for artists with recordings of these sessions and all of the previous professional development workshops. And they will also have other resources, so you can stay tuned for more info on that as well. And here's some more info about the upcoming online workshops. The next one is going to be on Wednesday, January 21st. It will be co-led by guest presenter Zoe Teleporos on Next Level Project Management for Artists. She's going to share some insight, resources, tools, and on how to manage larger scale public artworks. The next one will be on Monday, January 26th, held by Noe Montez, who is on the first cohort of the Artist Council, and he'll be sharing about creative sustainability in public art. So how to thoughtfully integrate sustainability into your practice through materials and production methods and conceptual framing. The next one will be on Monday, February 2nd, on crafting compelling public art proposals. That will be held by Sarah Rara, who will be guest presenting and discussing how to craft a narrative while integrating technical feasibility into the project as well. And then the next one will be on Wednesday, February 4th, who will be guest presenting Emily Womack and Pat Gomez with LA County, and they'll be talking about how to collaborate with public agencies and the processes and policies and structures that inform that process. And finally, on this slide, we have on Monday, February 23rd, we will have financial management and public art projects, and we will have Hannah Cole and Lita Venieri guest presenting, and they will be sharing about planning, tracking, and managing project funds for your commission, covering payment schedules, contracts, insurance, taxes, and long-term maintenance. There will be 4 more sessions after these, and you can stay tuned for those. And I'll pass it back to you, Emily.
Thank you so much, Summer. Really exciting lineup coming down with some great speakers. So I encourage you guys as you can to attend as much as you can. But turning to tonight, as I mentioned, we are going to be talking a bit about how public art comes with a lot of challenges, sometimes unexpected, sometimes expected, but that those moments can lead towards growth and change and development as an artist. And we are so thrilled to be joined tonight, as I mentioned, by Susan Logoreci, who will share her own practice and the ways that these constraints, feedback, and even rejections, as we all receive in the world of public art, helped her to evolve her creative practice by giving some real world projects and talking about her practice in a really authentic way. Before we jump in, though, I also just want to acknowledge that, there is a lot going on in the world right now. It is heavy and unstable and somewhat brutal in ways that can feel very large and very personal. And a lot of us in this room are probably holding some grief, some fear, maybe deep uncertainty. The fact that you all chose to be here tonight, to log on, to sit into this room, to listen and think about art and process and growth, that matters. And it doesn't fix everything, but it is an act of attention and care in a moment that can consistently pull us towards numbness or even panic. But public art really lives in that tension. I think Susan would understand that. It is made inside systems that are messy, political, often underfunded, and sometimes even unjust. And it's also one of the few ways that creative work can exist in the public sphere. So in talking about feedback, constraints, and resilience, those are really not abstract things right now. It's deeply tied to how we survive and how we keep making. And so that's why I am so grateful for Susan to be here tonight, not because you have all of the answers, but because you are willing to talk so honestly about what actually it takes to navigate these systems while owning a creative practice. Next slide, please. Susan, as I mentioned, is an artist. She creates beautiful, incredible, profound works in the contemporary and urban landscape. Her art deals with themes of uncertainty, with optimism within our cities and our communities. And when you look at that work closely, you will see everything from an individual window to a roof that makes up a city. Her drawings have been seen in many storied and historic venues, publications, periodicals, and locations. And her work has been exhibited both nationally and internationally. Background in art from San Francisco Art Institute and Master of Art from the Cal State Long Beach. We are just, as again, very honored to have you here tonight. So with that, I will turn the floor over to you, but I will remain here in dialogue and conversation with you as we move through the conversation.
Thank you so much. I'm really honored to be here, and I hope my story and my work helps other people navigate public art. I've been doing this public art since 2011, and the world has changed a lot since then. And I'm going to just start out by a little bit by talking about how I got into public art. It was not something that I planned on doing when I was in graduate school. I really wanted to be a gallery artist. Next slide, please. And I was actually working at the Getty Museum when I was in graduate school and afterwards, and just making my art at night. And I started showing in galleries, and I started having success there, and I sold out a couple shows, and my work, the larger pieces, started ending up in public places in private companies. So this is a lobby of a law firm in Culver City, or no, Century City, sorry. This piece is called 213-212, and it's kind of this image of New York and Los Angeles and how the different ways the urban spaces play out in those cities. Next image. And so as I was also getting private commissions. This was 3 drawings I did for City National Bank in downtown Los Angeles. This is in their cafeteria. And it was interesting working with corporations, really, and they had their own concerns that were minor. I didn't really care, like certain things like their competition was Bank of America, so they didn't want the logo in the piece, like things like that. But I had a lot of fun making these pieces. It was sort of this idea of like flying around 360 around Los Angeles, and it kind of turned it into this bigger city where it kind of disappears on the edges, like it's still being built. Um, Next image. This is a close-up of one of the pieces. So my work kind of took me into public art, and around like 2010, 11, I started to apply for projects, and my dealer did not like it. He felt like public art was different than gallery art, and those were two different worlds. And I think at the time he wasn't wrong. That idea was sort of changing. So and I like to think I kind of tie it to when the High Line opened in 2009, that contemporary artists were sort of stepping into public art more. And I think there were a lot of artists that just had a public art practice and no real studio practice or gallery practice, but that was in flux at that moment. So I didn't have a ton of support from my gallery about doing that. I did it anyway, because I really wanted to do kind of bigger things and fabricated things. Next image. So I've done, I want to say 5 projects with LAX, and this was a great starting point for me. Um, Next image. They have a great program where they don't have a collection. They just have these sort of always changing exhibitions. And they give a really pretty decent funding, and their projects are up for, I think, about 6 months. This is the first one that I did where I took those 3 drawings from that commission and I had them photographed and blown up and kind of I stitched them together in Photoshop, printed them on vinyl, and then kind of ran them up the wall like wallpaper. So this was fabricated by a sign company. And the budget was $5,000, and I think I got to keep like $200. I spent all of it on the project, which was great because I could use the images to apply for other things. And so I really wanted to present Los Angeles as kind of megalopolis, and going to the space, it's a real transitory space too. So I wanted something that would really capture people and delight them. And actually when it was up, people would take their picture in front of it. So I think it was a nice welcoming um, art piece, welcoming people to Los Angeles. Next image. So I didn't make work specifically for this project. It was sort of reusing other work. And, little things went wrong with this project, like the hard drive disappeared from the vendor, and the lights are on all the time. So the glue at the top started coming undone like after the first week, And at the time, like these were sort of like very anxiety provoking problems for me. But, looking back, it was just kind of regular, normal problems. Next image. This is the last project that I did with them. This was right before COVID. I hung up original paintings under plexiglass, and I also did a mural. Next image. So they're these kind of airplane window shapes with kind of Southern California, Los Angeles images in each one. And I had this whole idea that I was going to have mats cut out in the airplane window shape, but the budget didn't really cover that, so I ended up just drawing the shape instead, and that was free. So that was a nice kind of solution to that problem. One thing I did discover though is the city actually, or LA World Airports, I guess, is the commissioning company now. They actually covered the pieces with plexi so people couldn't touch them, but they were kind of open on the top. And there is this kind of like black film that covers everything in the airport. So it's interesting that it did kind of penetrate the paper a little bit. Next image.
Can I ask you a quick question about
Sure.
these? With the LAX ones, there's different commissions, temporary versus permanent, there can be different constraints. With those pieces, are those ones held by LA World Airports afterwards, or are they returned to you?
I actually sold all those when they were up, which was really great. And they, so they were only supposed to be up 6 months, but COVID happened. And so it actually ended up being up for like a year and a half. The buyers wanted the pieces. So I actually replaced them with other ones and made new ones and hung those up. And then eventually I just took them back. Whatever was left, I got back. And then the mural, this was another painting that I did. I think the original painting was only 9 by 20 inches. So I had that scanned and printed onto vinyl, and that just got, destroyed. They just tore
Sure.
that off. And actually, the original painting for this was purchased by Russell Crowe, the actor, which is sort of interesting.
Wow.
Who knew that was going to happen during COVID, but that happened. Next image. Yeah, and so it was such a small painting. I don't know if you can really see it on this slide, but when I had it scanned, the woman who scanned it was like, "Oh, you're scanning it so large, you're going to see every little, paint stroke and quote unquote problem." But I really liked that because I felt like in a setting like the airport, it really would look more like an original artwork, even though it wasn't. And also there, can't see it in the slides I showed, but there's a lot of advertising in that terminal. So you're kind of competing against that. And I thought, it'd be nice to not have something too kind of slick. It's nice to see all that kind of handmade kind of imperfection in there as well. So that worked out, I think, in terms of just, the medium worked well with that. If it couldn't be original, it was at least close to it. Next image. So the first large fabricated permanent project I did was with Los Angeles Metro on the Expo line. Next image. And so when I applied for that project, I took all my LAX images and also the private commissions I'd done, and I used those to apply for this, and I became a finalist, and they assigned me the Santa Monica station. And so I used the money that they gave me for proposal to take a couple of helicopter rides. And I took one at day and one at night to gather images to make artwork from. Next image. So these are a couple images that my friends and I took in a chartered helicopter, which was super fun. Next image. And so this is what I proposed. These are actually the proposal boards that I used for this project. And it was sort of this idea of as the train got closer to the beach, the images would sort of get larger. So it was like this telescopic kind of idea where as you approached, it would start from far away images of aerial views of the area, and then you get closer and closer until it was a close-up of the beach and water. And then the ends, next image, would be sort of night images. So there'd be day images on the platform and then night at either end. And when I gave my proposal, I was so nervous when I gave the proposal. That was all, everyone was doing everything in person too. Then the community member who was there just really disliked this large Ferris wheel. He's like, that just doesn't look like the Ferris wheel.
Mm.
It didn't get it. And just like having to explain, you know, why abstraction matters and how you can say things without using an exact rendering where you can speak beyond the actual object you're talking about. And anyway, just trying to kind of discuss why I drew it that way. And anyway, it was kind of interesting conversation that was had. But I was awarded this project, but not the Santa Monica station. So the whole design that I kind of created, I had to revamp it for the Sepulveda station. Next image.
That has me thinking about, in these early years when you're just starting your first kind of projects out in the public, certainly talking about your work with a general audience is a shift.
Yeah.
But I'm curious if there were maybe a few things that you could reflect on that like were some of the other shifts that you maybe noticed about how you were from making for your galleries or in your studio to making in this context, and whether there were things that like maybe fed back into your studio or vice versa. Like, I don't know if that,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it definitely was alter, the way that I like to work in the studio is sort of intuitively
Yep.
and to just sort of jump in and make stuff and have things come out of that.
Yep.
Um, and public art, you're really kind of just shooting in the dark if you do that. You really need to think about the design. There's a lot of design time that needs to happen before anything gets made, or you're just because
Yes.
you don't have much time. And even the proposal phase, I think, was relatively short, maybe a month or something.
Yep.
And that includes coming up with a presentation that you
Mhm.
have to practice and know. So it's like not a ton of time. So that was a big shift for me, just to sit down and have to really design and design and design until I came up with something. And then, of course, getting assigned another station
Yeah.
redesign. So, because it's a totally different part of Los Angeles, and the station configuration was totally different.
Mm.
So everything was different. And then I want to say the time I had to make all the work, it was 8 panels, and I did pretty detailed drawings for them. It was 4 months,
Yeah.
so that was short. There's a lot of long days. So this is back up in the helicopter, took more images of the area around that station. Actually, you can kind of see it where it's not quite built yet,
Mm.
too. They're just sort of digging the track in, putting the track in. It's Sepulveda and the 405. Next image. This is one of the drawings I made from that area, from that viewpoint. That's one of the drawings, and the next image is the fabricated version of it.
Mm.
And so Metro is great because they help you pick a fabricator. They had a process where there were four proposals, and they actually took 1 square foot of one of my drawings and created their version of it.
Mm.
And we end up picking a fabricator up in Montreal called Mosaica, and they do all hand cut mosaics. They sent me up there to oversee that process, although I mean, I just sort of hung out and gave a talk, and they know what they're doing up there. They were amazing, and they really could capture my line too, which I was worried about, but I didn't have to worry. Next image. I threw some pictures in here of them fabricating it. It was an interesting process where they just print out the image and then it's sticky and they actually kind of just put it together like a puzzle. They just clip all these pieces. But they also use pieces from past projects that they've done. So there's all this other texture in there and other little patterns from other projects. So that was great.
Were
Next.
you nervous about translating your imagery into this new media that you'd never worked with before? Like, what was that process like for you?
Yeah, I mean, after I saw what they submitted, they got it so
Yeah.
completely. I was not worried, but I was excited because I felt like it really did mirror what I'm doing, where it's all these little bits coming together to create cities. It's like the mosaic is doing the same thing. And so I just felt like it was such a perfect medium for what I was doing. I couldn't wait to see it done. Uh, but yeah, I think if I hadn't seen those samples, that was kind of key
Yeah.
of like what's possible,
Yeah.
because everybody did have a totally different interpretation too. It was really interesting.
Oh my goodness, I totally agree. I feel like, especially when you're trying new materials and things, like having the either an advocate through the commissioner or the wherewithal yourself to say, like, I need to see this. I need to see something to give you that confidence that how you've made your mark making for so long is
Yes.
going to be replicatable is a really wonderful, almost entirely necessary step in the process that I think can get left out sometimes or not even funded sometimes.
Yes. And my work, the handmade quality of it is so important to
Yeah.
me, that this sort of subjective nature of my work, that I really was with other fabricators, I'll show later, like it is worrisome that it's going to end up just becoming kind of generic looking or like, so filtered through a computer that it just becomes generic. And so that is something that I always look out for. Yeah, it can be nerve-wracking to that. I mean, and I have to say, working with a fabricator is probably one of the most important parts most important relationships in public art, because you really want to make sure it's translated appropriately. Uh, I have a couple more images and then next image. So yeah, this is how it looked laid out when it arrived in Los Angeles.
Beautiful.
And they built frames for it in this warehouse and installed it. So really, Metro is great. They really do help you through the whole process. And then they manage the financials too. So I didn't have to deal with any of that either. So you can kind of see how they cut the tiles up close. It's very irregular too, which I love.
I think that's a really interesting point too for artists that are transitioning to, there's different commissioning agencies do things differently. The long-standing, kind of majority of the time they hand the whole budget over to the artist to
Yeah.
manage. And what you were just sharing there, Susan, is some agencies, including Metro and some others, operate a little differently. Well, they'll hold the fab budget and really, I think, like, especially if you're wanting to dip a toe, start to build a portfolio, try out a project, looking for commissioning agencies, look at what the support system the commissioning agency has around you might help determine what's a good first step into this field.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, and I've had projects too where I hold on to the money and I sort of pay the fabricators, and there is sometimes they run credit checks and
Mhm.
that type of thing too. There's these financial constraints, so you have to have clean credit and that you don't think about as an artist, I mean, so um, there is, yeah, it's interesting I think more municipalities are doing it the other way where they're paying out or they have their construction crew installs too. Like I've seen
Mhm.
that more than I did when I started. But Metro, I think, always did it that way, and it's really helpful if you don't have any experience. And actually, I did call them after this project too, and sort of get info details about other vendors, and they were always really helpful. So that was a great tool for me, definitely. And then next image. So the design of this station, I actually kind of kept the idea of day and night and this idea of close and far and just reconfigured it in the station. So there were these end caps as you walk in, and I did a close up of a night image. And then on the other side, next slide, is the daytime image. And then as you walk through the station, one side of the platform is night and the other end is daytime images. And then the long end pieces go from day to night. So we could just go through that quickly. Next image. So you can kind of see that happening here.
Mm.
So that was great to do. And it really is great when you're standing on the platform, you can really see a lot more of the detail. It really is for those viewers waiting for the train. And then I like the idea of like looking up and then you're looking down. That sort of visual confusion is fun. So yeah, this was a great project. This was I want to say it opened in 2015.
Wow.
Let's see. But yeah, that's about all I have to say about that project, I think. That was a great experience though, and really gave me a lot of confidence to apply um, for bigger things as well. This project was a really great conversation between the community and myself. I really learned a lot from this project in terms of how to communicate and how to take in criticism and sort of vet it. Next image. This was a fire station in San Diego. And so this was kind of interesting the way they do it. There was a request for qualifications that I applied for, and then I was chosen as a finalist, but there was no proposal. It was just an interview, and it was pre-Zoom, so I think we did it on Skype. And I was chosen for the project, and it was not built yet.
Mhm.
And so this is just sort of drawings, architectural renderings of what the building was going to be. And so they had chosen the space for the art already, and it was this narrow sliver in the front. So the bigger wall to the right was going to be used for training, and so
Mhm.
that was not, no art is allowed on that wall. And so this is what I first proposed to them, this sort of idea of these houses that were in squares. And so the negative space of the building kind of made up this ladder shape.
Mm.
You can see it a little better on the next slide. Oh, sorry, that didn't make it in. But anyway, so then there was one on the side as well too, with these sort of houses. And so they have an art council that was fantastic. I think it was like 7 to 10 professionals. And they're from museum workers, teachers, all kind of artists. And so we would meet up every month or so, and I would show them what I was working on. And now I think we were in COVID at this point too, so I couldn't really go and meet with them. And their critique was that the imagery, the scale was off, and that everything was kind of blobby and didn't read from the street. And one thing I didn't know, because I didn't live in San Diego, is that this is on a very main boulevard and there's no pedestrian traffic. So people are going to be driving by at 45 miles an hour, and it's not going to register. So went back and redesigned, took that criticism in, very valid criticism in. Next image. And then kind of came back. You could see the old design on the right, and then a newer one on the left with these simplified houses, where you just sort of see the roofs and these kind of lawns or the area around the house. And they like that better, but they also felt like the color, people are sort of moving more into like a desert landscape and away from lawns. So they were like, didn't love the palette. And so the next image. So that was the final one where I lightened the palette and made it sort of yellows and pinks and things like that. And this would have been done with porcelain enamel on a steel substrate.
Mhm.
Next image. And then so there was a lot of pushback from the community about this fire station. It was in this sort of green belt creek area that was very beautiful. And a lot of the people who lived there for decades, and they loved that area. They loved hiking and the natural landscape, and they didn't want a building in the middle of it, even though they do need a fire station there because obviously during all the fires, and that's getting worse. And they've measured, I think if it was like under 10 minutes response time, they had to build one. So they needed one, but the community didn't want one. And they were really great about showing up to every meeting. And the firefighters would be there as well. And there was a lot of contention between everybody about this project in general. And then I would show up and I would sort of talk about, well, here's what I'm doing with the art. And it took me some time, but really, I started to get notes from the community, even though they didn't want this project. I was like, well, you're here, and so it'd be great to just hear what you've got to say. And they felt like that the houses on the side, it was too repetitive, and they wanted the creek and the natural beauty in there. And so I ended up changing the piece on the side street to reflect more of the natural area and how the houses sort of relate to the natural area, the beauty of the creek and the green belt. Next image. And then there ended up being a little bit of money left over to do a piece in the courtyard too. So I had this idea of this ladder shape as well, but it's sort of doing something a little more perspectival in the courtyard. So it was interesting that I don't know, I learned a lot about how to get people to give feedback, because I think I sort of went in there going, what do you think about what I'm doing? And people just didn't respond to that. I think some of them felt maybe a little intimidated. They didn't know how to talk about art.
Mhm.
And also, I think there was a couple of them just felt like they didn't want to hurt my feelings with criticism, which I think is great, but also just reframing it as like, I've been hired to be the expert here. Um, so I just want information, and I need as much information as possible.
Yeah.
And also, let's talk about the community values, which they were more than open about sharing their values. And so that ended up being great, but just sort of opening up those dialogues. And it did seem after we'd met a few times that everybody sort of got along better, and there was like less contention. So it was nice that I felt like art helped with that.
Yeah.
Although I will add that this project, they were really good at fighting this project, so good that it's actually been shelved. So,
Oh, wow.
so, which like I totally do get, I mean,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
their community. And so it will be built, and when and where exactly is unclear at this point. So,
I think
so
that's
that happens.
yeah, a great example that sometimes, the art is not the only thing being considered in a lot of these projects, as like it's a part of a bigger conversation about space and community and what exists there and what doesn't. And I think it's really helpful for all of us in this field to realize like our piece is our piece, but there's also other pieces happening, and sometimes we're tied to those, and the outcomes of those can impact us too.
Yep.
So I think that, thank you for sharing that.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, like there were certain things when I was awarded this project, I was excited because I thought, oh, well, fire stations are open all the time, so it'll be lit and people can see the art all the time. But it's like actually nobody wants those lights on it at night. The neighborhood definitely didn't want that, and there is an ecosystem there that is fragile and not going to be served by bright lights on the art at night. So it's like just when you have ideas like that, it sounds great, but then yeah, there's more to it than just me and my concerns or the art's concerns, me as the representative for the art.
Yeah.
So yeah, just really thinking about all that, and it was a really interesting situation, that I know isn't finished either. I definitely believe in this project, and this
We
is the artwork for it too. So
we did get one question from the audience that I think really relates, and I don't want to
sure.
lose it while I don't want to lose maybe your train of thought on it and wait till the end. The question is about if you remember, what kind of questions you asked the community to get them to feel like they could open up to you.
Yeah, I mean, I think we just started talking more about, I talked about my community and what I valued and why I moved to the community that I was living in at the time, and just shared my experiences and sort of like as an example of like, here's what I want to hear from you. And that sort of really helped. So I think it was more, it wasn't questions, but it was sort of like, yeah,
Modeling.
me sort of just presenting my own experience, and then this sort of like call and response from them about theirs.
Yeah.
And then they really opened up about how the area used to be really trashed, and the whole community cleaned it up with no help from the city, and so they really had a stake to claim on it, I think, too, in a way that was very deep, you know. And it took me time to understand that.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, thanks for that question. Next image. So yeah, this was another interesting project. Constraints on Creative Catalyst, Phoenix Sky Harbor Airport floor. This is probably the biggest thing I'll ever do. This was
Never
really
say never.
exciting. Never say never, but I don't know. It's 130 feet by like 120
Wow.
feet or something. So yeah.
Wow. Okay.
I don't know. Maybe not, next image. This is an interesting story as well. Um, I put in my qualifications for this project, and I was chosen as a finalist.
Mhm.
And this was my proposal images. This was a close-up of one of them. And basically it was aerial views of different swimming pools throughout the Phoenix area, back into this airplane window shape. Next image. But I kind of put them in this pattern on the floor. And the proposal, it did say you could present for the walls as well. There was some wall space, as you'll see later. I did not do that. They wanted paint on the wall, and it was terrazzo floor because there wasn't money to do more on the walls. I thought, oh, that's going to look funky if they age differently. I don't know. It just didn't seem like those materials matched to me. So I
Mhm.
only proposed for the floor, and I put these airplane windows on the floor. Next image, you can see a wider view of it. So that's sort of what I proposed. And I went there in person for the day, and presented my ideas. And it didn't go that well, I will say, in my presentation. I feel like they thought it was a little weird. And also, one thing I learned about floors is you don't really ever propose a white floor. Think white carpet, but worse.
Yep. Yep.
So there's some mistakes in there.
Yeah.
that, but I will say in my defense, I think there was maybe a 3 week um, period where I could come up with a proposal. So it was very short.
Yeah.
And I didn't love my proposal, but it's what I had.
Yeah.
And I had to present it. And that happens sometimes. And talking to other artists, when I first started doing this, I really felt like that was something I should be able to manage better. But I've talked to other artists who are like, that just happens. And the creative process can be longer than the period you're given sometimes.
Yeah.
And there's nothing you can do about it. So you just have to present what you have and hope for the best.
Mhm.
Um, and so I went home after this. It was sort of this crazy day too, where TSA like triple searched me because I had this round trip 1 day ticket with no luggage, and it was a big storm. There was like lightning gonna hit the plane. It was this whole kind of hectic day, and I got home and with the rejection email. I did
Mm.
not get this project, and so I moved on with my life. I got another project. Then I proposed for another one, didn't get it. Just things happened. COVID happened. And August 2020, I heard from the city of Phoenix, and I was apparently the runner-up, and the artist who was chosen was unable to complete the project. And so they needed a finished design by the end of the year. So it gave me about 4 months.
Yeah.
So next image. So I saw it as kind of a Hail Mary for me, obviously. I mean, I got to redo the design the way that I really wanted it to be. So this was the first mock-up I did. So this sort of idea of the airplane windows on the wall where they should have been in the first place. And um, sort of this idea of a glass bottom plane and aerial views of the city of Phoenix on the floor. So
Hmm.
next image.
We get one of the questions we get asked all the time from artists who are applying for things is like, can I give two options or can I show, because of exactly what you're talking about, of
Yeah.
feeling like I'm I'm not ready yet to fully present this thing. I know there might be some misses, some hits, some flaws in here, and I don't want to lose this whole opportunity by sinking into one. I didn't want to show that I'm flexible, but often we're not. And I'm curious if through this
Yeah.
project, if there are ways you've addressed that and how you apply to things in the future that you might have learned from of like how to balance that need to show flexibility, but also be strong in what you're putting forward.
I know it's really hard. It's
Yeah.
hard to walk that. I mean, I guess ideally, what I like is to present something that could be made if that's what it has to be.
Yeah.
But things always change as you go through the process because when you're presenting the proposal, you haven't really met with the community. You maybe haven't even been to the site. It's not built. You haven't met with the architects. You have maybe like 3 renderings from weird angles. Like you just don't have a lot of information yet. So of course things are going to change. But it's hard to I don't know. It just depends on the committee too, because sometimes you walk into a room and they really love hearing that you'll be flexible and that you want to be, part of the team and hear all the ideas that are going around. And then other times it's like, well, that sounds like you're not sure.
Yeah.
So, it's just sometimes you you just say the wrong thing and you lose it. It's like that's
Yeah.
just like I'm going to talk about that later too.
I think
But
I always tell artists go like try to listen to your gut in those areas too. Like
mhm.
you are the you are the one who knows your work. Like if it's something you feel really, really strongly about, maybe that's a good space to lean into that versus if you're not feeling super strong. But I hear you. Yeah, I knew when I asked that was a really tough question.
Yeah, I don't think you're never gonna know, and then sometimes you are gonna miss, and it's just part of the process too. That it's and I really wish that would be great to give more than one option. Yeah, you have to go in so far in on one thing that it just seems like time-wise it would be hard to do that too.
Oh yeah.
Um,
But
but I don't know. I mean, maybe I love that there are committees talking about how to revamp, the proposal process, and maybe there can be a way to help it be, just sort of fit into how artists make art more, it just seems like it is out of sync sometimes, especially the timelines. So, um, there's no perfect situation for sure. But with this one, I did get to at least come back and really kind of do what I wanted to do. So this was sort of getting towards the final design. And then even the image on the right of sort of so there's the city night lights, obviously, and then the suburbs, and then there's hay fields all around Phoenix that are sort of bright green to ochre. And then it sort of ends in the mountains. So as you're flying in and out of Phoenix, this would sort of be your experience. And even the one on the right was too white and light, so I had to go back in on that one too. So the next image. And so this was a mock-up too, and this is a little bit closer to how it ended up looking. This was a little more detailed than they could do. So that was the other thing. My work is highly detailed, and terrazzo floors, they can't do endless detail or endless color. It's limited in what you can do. So that's why I wanted to talk about the city and having night lights in there was like a easier way to create density without a lot of detail. So next image. So here were some of the color samples that they sent me. This was also during COVID, so I did not get to go to their studio, and they had to just send samples in the mail. I worked with an amazing fabricator that they handpicked for me. They were already on the project, stone finish. And one thing I did learn, I think I can only use 32 or 34 colors total, but you can put different aggregates into each color to sort of shift the color. And so there's a lot of wiggle room that way, and I did maximize that, I think. And then so the final design is on the right. You can kind of see it's a little tiny there, but
An aggregate is the stone pieces, the little flecks that you see
correct.
in these samples. And what Susan's saying is you can put different colored stones into the color of the concrete mix that actually shifts the tonality without changing the base concrete mix.
Exactly, exactly. And they had a broken mirror in there, mother of
Oh,
pearl. There's
wow.
lots of options.
Very cool.
Quartz, all kinds of things. A lot of them were locally mined too, which was great. Next image. So I have a few images of how they actually fabricated, laid the floor. My final design was paintings, and then they needed vector images from those paintings. So that's one of those things, when I first started doing public art, I really felt like I had to know how to do everything, like vector drawings, which I don't know how to do that. And so I've learned that you can outsource a lot of these things, especially the first few proposals I remember I went out for, I was competing against like architects. And so they'd
Mhm.
ask me these questions like, how much weight can the wall hold and things like that. And I always just felt like, oh, I should know that. But you really don't need to know that. You just need to know how much to pay the person who does know that and put that in your budget. So
I love that answer so much. And I think that is so, I just want to be like, yes, like you don't need to you're gonna in public art we interface with so many different professionals and so many different professions. And it's like I always remind folks like you don't need to be the engineer, you don't need to be but what you do need to be is the person that is the advocate and the owner of their work. Like stand up for that, know that, own that space,
yeah,
and get your team around you to support that. And
yeah.
I really love that message.
Yeah, and it takes time to assemble that team
Yes.
sometimes. You have to find those people. There's great tools though. I mean, Upwork is great.
Mm,
There's lots of professionals on there. I use them a lot. There's engineers there. You can have them write reports for you.
I
So
didn't know that.
there's all kinds of people, at least give you a price, of what things
Yeah.
cost and things like that. So yeah, just knowing where to look and how to do that research is more important than actually having the information in the room. That was a lesson that took me a bit of time to learn. But having a hand-picked fabricator really helps because they'll tell you what you need to know, and it's great to listen to them too because they can tell you what's going to work. In Phoenix, their airport, they have a permanent collection actually that's rotating, and they have a museum there. But mostly they have these floors. I think there's 12 of them, and so that's sort of the art collection there. That's the main part of it, and so it was great to be part of that. So. I had vector drawings made from my paintings, and I found a great designer who kind of got my line too, and that took some doing. And then it was sent to a metal fabricator who made these, turned the vector into metal pieces, and then they would lay the styrofoam down, put the metal in it, and then slowly cut out the styrofoam and pour the concrete mixed with the stone and the paint color, which was just, I think, Sherwin-Williams paint colors, into each metal area. So you can kind of see them doing that in the next few slides. Next image. And then before they polish it, it just looks terrible. So you don't really know what you're going to get. So it was a whole process. I went out there maybe 4 or 5 times. It took them 2 or 3 months to lay this floor. It was not fast. Next image.
Hmm.
You can kind of see them doing the fields.
Really a process of trust at this point.
Yeah, yeah, because you're not totally sure what it's going to look like, but I could sort of see the shapes. And I would go out, and before they would actually start pouring, I would see that all the styrofoam, the metal was in the styrofoam correctly, is what I was looking for when I would go out. Next image. So you can kind of see it getting laid there.
Mhm.
Next image. There we go. There's the
Oh,
final image, all polished.
it's beautiful.
Thank you. Yeah, I was really proud of this project. And I learned a lot about floors and how to guide people down them. I think that's an important
Mhm.
aspect too, of how to lead people through. Um, Next image. That was a nice shot with the plane. So it's in the Southwest Terminal, by the way, if anybody ever is there, you can see it. Next image. And so we did end up doing these wall pieces. They came up with some extra money to actually fabricate wall pieces that went with the floor as well. And those are about 2 by 3 feet, I want to say. And they built these, the architect, um, who was it? It was Corgan, I think, was the architect. They built these beautiful frames for them. They just looked so great. I was really happy with how that came out. And the wall pieces were all handmade, just hand cut, I guess. Um, so that was really great. Next image. So yeah, here's the homes and the pools, kind of the suburbs and these streets, and it's abstracted somewhat too, which I liked. Next image. And the kids always get it. It's great to see kids on it. They like to play on it. And so it was great too to make something that I really felt like was for all levels of art experience. You
Mhm.
know, that I felt like I managed that well. Next image.
Yeah, it's really beautiful to see, like from your studio practice, you're already thinking about space and environment and the built environment, but thinking about it for a viewership that was really different. And it's been really lovely to hear you talk about how you learned about doing that, both in the metro and this instance of shifting your perspective, the core of your work. You can see the through line there, but
Yeah,
you're learning like what does it mean to look up from a station and see something? What does it mean to walk across it in a hall, in a concourse? What does it mean to make work for these different audiences and these different temporalities? Um,
yeah.
and I think that's the ideal trajectory where like something about the commission connects with an existing part of your practice, but you're reframing that either spatially or conceptually for the audience.
Hmm.
Not really a question, more of a comment there for you.
Yeah, and scale, has
Yes.
really been a challenge too, because I tend to work, when I make work in my studio, it's relatively small, like 4 by 6 feet maybe is the largest, and so working on a scale like this and this was not built obviously either, so you couldn't really go and see what 30 feet wide looked like, so I would be with, the tape measure in my street, just trying to figure out what that was going
What
to
is that?
be,
Yeah. Yeah.
so that was a lot to really kind of imagine too. You really have to sort of imagine what the scale is going to look like.
Yeah.
uh, Next image. So you can see the close-up of the terrazzo here and the kind of twinkly aspects of it. I love it as a material. It's such a fun material. Next image.
Mm.
Next image. So it ends in this mountain, sort of mountain range with 20 of these wall pieces at the very end. Next image. And I should add too, usually my work takes a long time to make. It's very detailed um, and before I got this project, I had been part of a zine club where we were making, it was a group of people who were not artists. One was like a psychiatric nurse. There was social workers, writers. And so we would get together and make a zine about a certain topic. And it sounds crazy, but it really did help me work more quickly on this. I got used to doing something more off the cuff and having the confidence to do that without relying on all the detail and the time spent. And
Mhm.
so just having sort of outside hobbies and interests like that, very important to the artistic process too. And this is not something I ever really did anything with, but like it just really kind of fed my creative process and enabled me to make this work a lot more quickly than I was used to making. Um, Next image.
And just a clarification question that came in. The
Sure.
airport determined that it would be terrazzo, and then you worked with that, or did you pick that
Yes.
here? Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And we did talk about mosaics on the wall.
Mm,
There was some talk of that briefly too, but at the end of the day, because we weren't sure the fabricator could do what I needed on the
yeah,
wall, that they could do something so detailed.
yeah,
But ideally, it would all be terrazzo just because that's more consistent.
yeah.
Um, so yeah, that was the chosen material.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Next image. Oh yeah, so a couple of projects. Not chosen. Um, I thought I'd share a couple of those just for fun too. It was fun, really interesting to go and kind of dig them out of my files.
Yeah.
Next image. This was a proposal I did for San Francisco Airport. Um, and it would have been in tile, in mosaic tile. I really would love to work with Mosaica again, so I pitched them as the fabricator. And it really had to do with Market Street. That's sort of the big white line in the middle and kind of depicting downtown San Francisco. And I grew up in Monterey, an hour and a half from there, and went to undergrad in San Francisco. So I always say it's the city that made me want to draw cities. And but anyway, I had a lot of fun kind of making this piece and really researching how San Francisco got built, which I didn't know all the stories, and there should be a podcast or a Netflix documentary about it because it is a really interesting, dramatic story on how the city got designed. Next image. This is a colored pencil drawing that I made.
Mm.
Next image. This was also in San Francisco. This was for their tennis center that they did. And I made this drawing of Golden Gate Park and the neighborhood around it. Um, and when I did the proposal, somebody said the word map during the meeting,
Mhm.
and that just hit everybody wrong. I didn't say it, somebody else said it. And I didn't have enough time to kind of like
Redirect.
yeah, there
Yeah.
just wasn't. So I just felt walking out. I thought, nah, yeah, that word just didn't. And I don't think it looks like a map either. But anyway, just sometimes that
Yeah.
happens and it just doesn't go your way, and that's okay. Um,
When
it's
you get
nobody.
rejections, do you, as a practice, do you request feedback on the and if you do you get it?
Sometimes yeah, I usually do. I mean,
Yeah.
sometimes you don't get it. Sometimes it's just an email. And honestly, a couple of times I've had to call them. I've heard nothing
Mm,
and not heard back. So
mm,
it's like that there's all kinds of responses that are varied. It is great if you can get a little feedback. And sometimes it's like, um, they wanted people, they wanted faces. And it's just
Right.
like, I don't do that. Like that happens, so sometimes it's just like that wasn't your project or you were an option and that's fine. Um, with this one, I can't remember. I mean, the map thing everyone got stuck on that. What they ended up picking was a woman, a Canadian artist. I don't remember her name because I actually saw it when I was up there a year or so ago. And it was sort of a kaleidoscope of tennis courts. It was photo based. I do feel like in San Francisco, current, not all the projects are picking, but a lot of them are kind of like photo based or tech based somehow, which like makes sense for them. And I feel like my handmade quality is not totally in sync, maybe with what's happening up there right now. That's kind of my guess, but it's always nice to be a finalist. And one thing I do is I do keep pretty good records. I keep everything, every
Mhm.
proposal,
Mhm.
every narrative I've written. So if it comes up again, oh, I'm proposing for another sports center. Oh, let me go look up and see what I wrote about that and did that proposal look like. And then also I sell the artwork that I made.
Oh, wow.
So this is actually, I think it's in Boston with a collector now. So there is like a reuse that happens too that I really like that the artwork at least has a second life.
Mhm.
And even in the Phoenix project, my proposal that I did not get chosen for originally, I sold all those little swimming pool pieces. So it was great. I mean, at least something comes out of it, and it's nice to have kind of new collectors sometimes. And so that's all, you can definitely never just throw anything away, really,
Mhm.
because you just never know when you'll need it again.
Yeah.
Um, next image. This was a kind of a funky design that I submitted for bathrooms in Venice Beach. And I don't think this ever got made at all. Last time I was down there, it was just a regular concrete floor. So I don't
Mhm.
know what happened about that. It was
Mhm.
going to be painted by the city, I think. Anyway, I was proposing the neighborhood of Venice with the beach and the water,
Yeah.
sort of the bike path there too, just a straightforward aerial view of it. That was kind of fun, kind of kooky proposal. But yeah, that happens too, where things don't get made. And
Yeah.
sometimes that's okay too. There's that phrase, rejection is protection. Sometimes if you don't get a project, not this one, but other ones where people have been, the proposal phase is difficult and you think, what would that be like to be legally entwined with these people? Maybe it's best the way, it ended up.
I
So,
hear that.
so that happens too. There's
Yeah.
all kinds of outcomes, you
Yeah.
know. Um, so let's see, what's the next image here?
What I really value, though, in how you were just speaking about that, and it could be also a matter of distance and time. You may not feel that way the day you get the rejection letter, um,
Yeah.
but is the reframe of the work as having value still. And I
Mm-hmm.
think, we chatted about this in some of our prelim conversations about like the way that unmade or proposal ready work is valued in public art versus perhaps in other fields, even like architecture and
Yeah.
such, where like that's seen as like, oh, it didn't happen, goes in the dustbin, create something new for the next time. And I think this reframing of that as all part of a growing process, something that could be utilized later, something that could be sold, something that could be repurposed, is actually builds out a much more kind of livable ecosystem in this field, like
Yeah.
where it's not just out and in. And I don't know, I just wonder if you have some thoughts about that too.
Yeah, I definitely, I mean, I don't think most people can live on just this. You're lucky if you get a project every couple of years if you're applying all the time. And there's not projects that fit the skill set of a specific artist all the time. So, like one thing I used to apply for a lot more things than I apply for today.
Mhm.
And I have rules now that it's like if it's far away, it has to be a certain budget. only 2D. I'm not going to propose for anything that where I have to build a structure. That's just not my skill set.
Mhm.
So, I think, yeah, it's like you have to kind of protect your energy, I guess. And one way of doing that is to kind of reuse things and as much as you can. And then, also like I see this as like one wing of what I do, you know. Um, so
Yep.
and I would say too, to talk about, there was a part of this about, how do you sort of maintain your confidence and your mental health throughout this
Yep.
process. It's not easy to be rejected. You put a lot of time into these. I mean, you do get paid, which is great, but it doesn't really cover the time it takes to do it,
Mhm.
usually. So it is tough, and I do take breaks too, after the Phoenix proposal that I didn't get, I probably took about 8 months off and just worked in my studio, and I have other things that I do with our consultants and things like that. So, yeah, you have to kind of find a way to relight the fire eventually. But it is good to take breaks when you need to, and only apply to things you are really excited about too. Even when you're building a portfolio, still, you should really kind of connect to the project rather than have this kind of scattershot
Mhm.
way of doing it, just for your own sake, because it's just too much. There was one day I got two rejection letters within 10 minutes. And it's like I was applying too much,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
So I think there are ways to manage that. Everybody has to learn their own way around that, I think,
Mhm.
you know.
Like,
But those are my strategies. Yeah, reusing things is a key one too, where it doesn't feel like there that was its life and then that life is over.
yeah.
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 Yeah. That's too sad. It's true. Architects do it. I had a calendar of Frank Lloyd Wright of all his rejected proposals.
Mm. Mm.
And they were really amazing,
Yeah.
So I don't know.
As we shared, there's a lot of reasons a project might be rejected, and it may not have much to do at all with your actual work, too. Like you
Yeah.
said, like there's so many different perspectives, there's so many different competing agendas in the room. And so I think thinking of it as like, I love that idea of the calendar of rejected projects, like
Yeah.
finding space of honoring the labor and the work and the creativity that go into that.
Yeah, yeah, and maybe they weren't like possible with the technology that was there at the
Yeah.
time too. There was like a lot of reasons. I mean, you definitely can't take any of this personally. It's not personal. It's, sometimes like I was saying, they want figurative work and I don't do that. So it's
Yeah.
like, you kind of went into it with a little bit of a less of an advantage that you didn't maybe know you had, which is a good thing because you really want to believe it's going to happen if you're in there,
Yeah.
proposing. But you know, yeah, you just don't have control over any of this. So it definitely has made me a lot less sensitive in my life to criticism because I feel like, I can vet what I need to learn and then what I don't think applies. Like I sort of trust myself
Mm.
to
Mm.
figure that out now in a way that I didn't earlier on.
Mhm.
So that's something I think I've cultivated just from being in a lot of different rooms and having a lot of different situations unfold. It just takes that.
Can I ask one more question on that front while you're at
Sure.
it? Do you have any red lines that you won't cross with like questions, like if someone asks you to change something or to modify a design that you're like, no, I just don't do that. Like I don't do people or, and have those been useful to you or not?
Um, I don't know if I've ever gotten notes where it's been a hard pass on
Hmm.
anything.
Hmm.
I mean, I guess I would really try to kind of find the Venn diagram of my values and theirs and try to kind of really find that sweet spot if I could, because I really do see this as a team effort too, even though
Yes.
it's like the artist name is on the plaque, but still it's like it is a conversation with the community and with, the architects and everybody there. So it's like beyond just what you want to have happen. So I don't know. I mean, I guess I would, definitely like one thing I've had to learn too is, that you're an independent employee and there's no HR. So you really do have to watch out for yourself and learn to say no, to things when you have to, but more around, not around the artwork so much as around like safety issues or like kind of employment things or contracts and things like that, like I've had to hire a lawyer before because I got some type of sketchy contract. So um,
Yeah.
that type of thing. Like, sometimes you do have to protect yourself,
Yeah.
but more as as a self-employed person, I would say, than an artist. That hasn't come up for me too much. I've heard stories from other artists though, where it's like they get a lot of notes from project managers that aren't artists. And, it's like it's hard. It's hard.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I've been fortunate to not have a lot of that, actually.
Right.
So I was just going to end with this project, which was a project I did with LA County in 2017, which was at Harbor UCLA Medical Center. It was a juvenile psychiatric ward. I think it's one of two in the entire country that serves a public hospital. Um, Next image. And so I made three large original drawings that actually went into the space. And it was really just an amazing experience to spend time. I got to actually go tour the short-term and long-term psychiatric wards. And just to be in those spaces was really eye-opening. And to meet the doctors and the staff that care for these people, and they know a lot of them. They've seen them in and out for years. Next image. But this was sort of different because it was for children who, before this wing was built, were being housed with either adult mentally ill people or sick children. So they had their own space, and it had no windows in it. So the artwork was as much for the people who worked there, who were in there 12 hours a day with no windows. So I sort of created these aerial views of this is Manhattan Beach. Next image. This is in the hallway, and most of the kids were brought in against their will too. So this is like where they'd be with the police usually. So just and I made a super detailed bright work for that, just so they'd notice it and maybe get lost in it a little bit. It really changed my practice a little because I started really using color a lot more after this project. Um, I would say the biggest constraints were really practical. It's small space and there's a potential for violence there. So just making sure these were going to stay on the wall was somewhat of a hurdle. That
Yeah.
was the biggest hurdle of this project, I would say. But one really an aspect I really enjoy about public art is like seeing behind the scenes of all these kind of different spaces. Like Phoenix Airport, I get to drive on the runway, like working at Metro, I got to walk on the tracks, and here you see what a state-run psychiatric ward is like, and um, it's just, yeah, a really great education. You almost have to come at it like a journalist, and be objective and just gain information. That's sort of how I see my role in those spaces. So, um, yeah, I think that's about it.
Wonderful. Well, we definitely have some questions for you,
Okay,
Susan.
great.
But first of all, thank you so much for walking us through your practice, sharing the evolution of it, from like the massive airport project as something very intimate and very um, powerful in the spaces of this juvenile psychiatric ward. So it's a pleasure to see all of these things and kind of the through ways that you've navigated this. Um, I'm going to ask Summer if you don't mind to bring Pat Gomez from LA County back as one of our co-presenters. Pat, as I mentioned, works with LA County Arts and Culture and is one of our colleagues in charge of the PAiD program at the county, and is here if we have some questions that also might specifically relate to how LA County works in commissioning artists, etc. But while we're doing there, I'm going to just dive into some of our questions so that we can get through them. So some of these relate back to other projects. Some of them might be more broad, but one of the questions was about the process of getting community feedback again. And the question specifically is, does your clients or your commissioners usually host those community feedback meetings, or do you go out and organize them, or is it a mixed bag?
It's in my experience, it's always been the project manager that organizes it. They actually usually don't want you because you don't know the landscape as well as they do and the politics, etc. So, they may have a neighborhood council that they've already been working with that they want to put you in rather than you just sort of going to a random meeting that you found and asking questions. Like they always put you in the situation. They go with you and kind of facilitate things too. Although I will say a lot of projects I've done that you don't have the opportunity to meet with the community because there are spaces that are transitory or there's like a lot of bad blood between the community and the municipality by the time that I show up. So there's no conversation. That unfortunately has happened to me once or twice. So, but yeah, the project manager will always facilitate those meetings.
Yeah. Pat, did you want to say anything about how community engagement facilitation works with the county, or you don't have to either?
Well, what I would say that is that for us anyway, with the county, we don't really dictate the form of the community engagement. It's really important to us that the artist, that engagement is in sync with the way the artist works. And so it may be a situation where there's a community meeting, but it may be a situation where a particular artist, for example, maybe they propose a concept, but it's not fully fleshed out because they want to have some kind of workshop situation with the community. So that's a different kind of an engagement. Or it may be a situation where there's different stakeholder groups, like maybe the staff is a very important stakeholder group, and maybe there's less of an opportunity to work with actual, end users. So that might look different. Then, so really very much depends. And we really look to see and ask the artist how they see the community interaction, because it can be something that's more informational to the community on one end, and then on the other end, it's something that's very collaborative with the community. So, and there's everything in between, and we really want to support the artist in a process that's natural for them.
Thank you. A couple of our attendees were really worried that when your San Diego project got shelved, that you might not have gotten paid. So could you share, if you don't mind, if you can, what you can about how that worked?
Sure, that's a great question, actually. So it was a project where they gave me, I was to pay the fabricator. And so we'd only gotten through design, so I'd been paid the design fees. And then there was sort of this next chunk of money that was sort of, I think it was sort of to start the fabrication project process and sort of to end the design process. It was sort of that last step after the design was submitted. And so that money I sort of held on to for like 3 years.
Wow.
And I just had an account for it and I just sat there. It wasn't much. It was some money, low five figures. And like they ended up just paying me saying that's fine, you can keep that. And because the other thing was that I started proposing this in 2019. This was last year that they sort of said we're gonna close this contract. And so everything had gone up, including like my the amount of money that I would charge. So it's like they can't do anything with that. So they did pay me out at the end, which was great too. With the promise that I am still the artist and that is the design. So
Oh, that's great.
yeah,
We're all glad to hear
they
that.
took care of me. They were
Concerned,
great. Yeah.
concerned voices can
Yeah.
relax.
Yeah.
Um, okay. Going back to the question when we were talking a little bit about like knowing everything, like knowing all of the things. This question was, how do you convince or explain to your client that even though you don't know a technical answer, like if a wall will hold a certain weight, that you can still make the work, especially when you're just kind of starting out?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, as much documentation as you can have at that stage, I think. If you actually have um, uh, like a figure and on like letterhead from somebody who could actually do the work, then I think that helps a lot. That goes really far. If you
Yeah.
actually have spoken to the person that you would pick and they gave you this number and you have that in writing, I think that really helps to say that you've done the research necessary and you have a reasonable sum of money for it,
Yeah.
that you've done the legwork. If you don't know, you may have to do extra legwork.
I actually think that that reads as more perfect, like than you trying to answer a technical question that would be wildly outside of your scope of work. Like it actually reads as knowing your stuff to say, I know that I'm not the person to answer this. I know a
Yes.
structural engineer is, and I know how to get one. And
Yeah.
I know how to, fit that into my budget. So I think that's a great answer.
There's so much pressure as an artist, I think, to be a good writer, to be a good
Mm.
public speaker, to be a historian, to be an engineer. It's like it's too much. So
Yeah.
it's like I just think that, as artists, we have to take that pressure off ourselves sometimes too. It's like don't give into that because it can be just so anxiety provoking to think you have to do everything.
One question, have you ever had a situation where a fabricator or contractor made a mistake or couldn't fulfill their time commitment to meeting a deadline? If so, how did you deal with that?
I've been really lucky and I have not had that happen. I know I've heard horror stories from people and who have gotten stuck with work that maybe they paid for and the project ends, or, the plans were wrong and the size is off. And I've heard all kinds of crazy stories. I mean, the end of those stories is it always gets solved somehow. So, I think
Yeah.
that is sort of the type of thing that you do need to learn to roll with and not get stressed out if it inevitably will happen to me probably too at some point. Um, but there's solutions for everything, probably the fabricator has to just redo it is the solution. And that's just
Yep.
their kind of breakage, that's just factored into their price, you know, I'm
Yeah,
guessing.
and I know Pat and we've talked a little bit about these things too, and also it's like keeping lines of like don't hold like I think sometimes when something in your project goes wrong, there's a penchant to feel like personally responsible, maybe even bring in some emotions of embarrassment or shame around certain things, and it's like that leads you to maybe not share. Like I would say, I really advocate for sharing what's going on with your commissioning team as early as possible.
Yes.
Then they can actually help. And I
Yeah.
would say in doing this for the 20 some years I've been doing this, most of the time, the commissioners and the artist want to support and help their artists. They want them to succeed. And so I think like feeling like not like it's a silo that you have to solve on your own, reaching out to that commissioner, talking to them, and then the second thing I would say to that is really making sure you've got a good contract with your fabricator because things
Yeah.
do happen, things do come up. And we're going to talk about lots of things about working with fabricators later on in this series. So maybe tune into those sessions too, if that's
Yeah.
something.
And that goes back to, if you think you need a lawyer, you probably do need one. It's just good life advice, actually.
Yes.
But
Yes.
especially with this, yeah, those contracts. One project manager I spoke with told I pointed out something in the contract. I read all the contracts twice,
Mm-hmm.
and I pointed something out. She said, "Wow, no artist reads these."
Mm, mm, mm.
So I mean, definitely read, especially with the fabricators. Yeah, it can really maybe cause problems down the line if you don't. But
Yeah.
don't sign anything without reading it.
Good advice for life, actually.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, next question. For proposal sample images, do you always generate a digital mock-up for the space that it's going to be installed in, or just images of the past of work plus past installed projects?
All the above. I have an image of what it could look like in the space. I think it's really important to give people an idea of that. So usually I do past images, an image of just the piece on its own, so they can sort of just take that in, and then maybe multiple images if I can of it in the space. Sometimes you don't get a lot of information. That is where designers come in handy, using that proposal fee. There was a time I used to just sort of use that as income. I now spend it on stuff like that. It just really improves the proposal. And usually you still can keep a little bit, but hiring a designer to actually create those is really important, I think. And make event, unless you're Photoshop whiz, which some people are. I'm not.
I
So
appreciate that because I feel like there's that's also a matter of like capacity and like maybe sometimes you got to keep it a little bit as a fee and sometimes you can't. And I think, that's a really great point. I also just want to clarify for this person as well that the difference between the RFQ stage and RFP stage, RFQ being qualifications, that's where it would just be past work images.
yes,
Um, and then you definitely, I would say, really don't want to show proposal images at that point. They are not really looking for that. And then what Susan's talking about is the RFP, the proposal stage, where
yes,
typically you get some money to do those things.
yeah, exactly. Thank you for that clarification. Exactly. Yeah, so in proposal phase, I would present all of that. Although, one thing you can do too for future qualifications, you can use old proposal images, and as long as you say this was a proposal image, I think that's fine to do. I mean, you paid for those images, and some of them look pretty real. So, you know, I think as long as you note it as not a project that happened, that's okay to do.
Yeah, and check that the RFP doesn't say only completed projects because some places still do that.
That's true, yeah.
Yeah. Just a comment came in when you were looking at the Sky Harbor. We have actually had a flight attendant on the call tonight who goes there all the time and has
Oh,
seen
nice.
it and loved it. So I
Oh,
thought I'd
great.
pass that on. It's a fun
That's
little
great.
connection.
Yeah, it's so great I mean, there's like 1 million people walk on it every year or something. It's amazing it's great. Yeah, I never thought I would do something that big for such a big audience. I wish I could see it more. I haven't seen it since like 2023.
Um, okay. Someone also wrote in, I sometimes feel that I act as an art ambassador, interacting with non-art project collaborators, someone who has not worked with an artist before. Does that resonate with your
Mhm.
experience?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I've had those experiences. Yeah, that can be challenging, because um, you can sort of have to take the role of maybe like a teacher, even though you're equals in terms of your roles. So that can kind of be a challenging kind of emotional intelligence, kind of moment. I have had that. I mean, I work with usually, when I'm not doing public art, with art consultants who have art backgrounds usually too. But when I've done like private commissions or um, uh, yeah, I guess sometimes their clients, it's interesting, Yeah, you do have to be an art ambassador. It's true. It's but I think with public art too, is like when you are kind of hitting the range of art experience too. And
Mhm.
so that can be interesting, especially if you're installing in a public place like LAX, people want to come up and talk about it. And so I don't know, it can be kind of like fun to be that ambassador too, because a lot of people don't encounter art regularly. Um,
Yeah.
so, which is sad. But
Got a just brief technical question for you about an RFQ process thing that I often see references requested in RFQs and asking about like, what do you use for references since the fabrication is sometimes outsourced? Like,
mm.
who would be a good reference for a public art application? What roles might they be? Is it fabricators or I don't know.
Project managers, I think, because that's the person you work with most closely, and also going back to the troubleshooting thing, if there are big problems with the fabricator, that's the first person you would call too, and just let them know, they're there to help, and they have a lot of knowledge. So yeah, I usually use them as references before. I had enough because sometimes they want three. I would use collectors too. Or if I curated like a show, the person who was running the space, so you can use people like that.
Mhm.
Um, that's why LAX is great too, because they have a lot of staff down there and you can use multiple people for references too. Um, so yeah, I would say project managers. I don't think I've ever used a fabricator for a reference.
Yeah, yeah. I feel like it's typically past folks who have commissioned you, like the actual
Yeah,
commission agency, like LA County or Metro, and the person that you've worked with there that you're calling the project manager.
yeah,
That's not always their title, but like the
yeah,
person that you most closely worked with from the commissioning agency
yeah.
themselves. I've also seen folks use teachers. I've seen folks use peers that are artists that also do public art that maybe can speak to their colleagues' capacities in that space if they don't have commissioning folks that they can draw upon. Um, yeah, I'm trying to think. I don't know, Pat, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, actually, I was gonna sort of look at it from the opposite side, sort of why we
Yeah.
ask for those. Um, and and generally, well, we don't ask for those until somebody's in the proposal stage, like
Mhm,
as part of that.
mhm, mhm,
Um, but it's really trying to gauge, will the artist, do they have a history of being on time, meeting
Mm,
deadlines? Do they have a history of staying within budget? Do they have a history of being able to work with the community in a very positive manner on whatever level
mhm,
that happens to be? So those are sort of the big main areas that we would be trying to gauge in working, just to make sure basically there's, not a lot of red flags, like in terms of, oh, well, this project, they didn't meet any deadlines. Of course, that would never happen with Susan. But, and hopefully it doesn't, it's very rare that we actually get a unfavorable sort of reports, because why would somebody put them as their reference if it went very badly? But it would give us the fact that you do have some positive projects and where things worked out really well, and we could see what kind of work it was that was done, and if it's not a past commission, um, it's gauging, is this a reliable person? That's kind of a main thing.
yeah, I totally agree. Um, we're gonna field maybe two, max three more questions, so that we can do some closing remarks and get Susan, who's I believe on East Coast time and is staying up very late for us. So we want
I'm a
to
night owl.
definitely, I really appreciate that, but want to get you out of here on time. So just a couple of more questions to round us out. One from me. How do you protect your conceptual core of a piece when you have to move through things like engineering, budgeting, maintenance, or even political questions? Yeah, do you have any kind of ways that you hold your conceptual core through all of the various things that you're asked to navigate?
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's where the creativity comes in as well, because it's up to the artist to figure out how to hold on to that while they're navigating all of those challenges, and um, it does take a lot of designing and redesigning, I think, in order to do that. One thing that has helped me a lot is whenever I get new information where I'm going to have to pivot in some direction, I really take some time to mull it over, and I don't do anything quickly,
Hmm.
especially if it's information that's sort of shocking or it's like,
Hmm.
oh, this is not possible or something. It's like,
Right.
okay, well, let's stop and really take this in, and really mull it over before reacting. And usually a solution presents itself that way. Being impulsive, I think, is not the right choice in those moments. That it's always going to help just to take an extra beat
Hmm.
to figure a way through it, you know. I
Yeah,
think that would be my answer to that.
so not a bad one. Um, a quick one. Do you have any recommendations for where or how you find the projects you apply to?
Oh, yeah, I mean, there's cafe, that's a big one.
Mhm.
And then there are just going to, cities, websites and a lot of them have email, places you put your email in, you can sign up for their calls. I
Mhm.
know Metro has that. And a lot of them do around Southern California too. You can go look on Orange County, San Diego. And then sometimes I'll just periodically look, where it's like if I'm even not hearing, I'll just sort of look on different municipality websites to like see what they're doing.
Yeah.
Um, that's sort of the way that I do it. There's a few other ones besides Cafe, but that's like the one I've always used. That's how I got the Phoenix project actually, was through Cafe.
I would be remiss in saying LA County also has a sign up, so
Yeah, they do.
definitely want to highlight that. You can also set up Google Alerts. We do this where we set up Google Alerts for keywords like public art, RFQ, RFP 2026, and you just get like an email
That's a
summary
good idea.
with what Google finds, and it's not always relevant, but yeah. Play around with those kinds of things that help to kind of collate it for you. And I would also just really underscore what Susan said about thinking about what you apply to, because you can really get application fatigue.
Yes.
So making sure there's a real strong choice about why you're applying to something.
And pre-qualified lists are great too, because those are definitely worth applying for in other states, where if they'll take you, a lot of times it's locals only, but sometimes it's not. And then, you get asked sometimes to propose, projects, or at least you'll get emails about RFQs from them. I know Oregon has one for the state, I want to say, and Seattle has one.
Yeah.
Um, so those are great too, and I've done those for a number of years.
I'm going to mash up two folks for one final question that are kind of around the same thing sort of, which is just do you ever come up with your own ideas for sites and pitch them to people? Are you always responding to RFQs? And do you recommend creating projects on your own to build out a portfolio?
Yeah, definitely. I have not done it. I mean, I've definitely had ideas, but I haven't really sort of figured out how to sort of who to contact and what to do. I'm usually just responding. Or I work with our consultants, and sometimes there's kind of these private public things that come up. But I think it's a great idea to pitch, especially if you do murals. I mean, that seems like the easiest way to get projects going. Go to your neighborhood council and see what type of funds are just sitting around in the art funds, and at least they can cover costs.
Mhm.
Um, So yeah, I would definitely do that. That's a great way to build up your portfolio, temporary projects or local projects that you create yourself, even with a business, say.
Yep.
Um,
I think definitely also on that front, being aware of with government specifically, it can be a little tricky to pitch things because there's a lot of rules about like how everything has to go through open calls to be transparent, above board, all the things we want government to be. But definitely would be different scenarios with private groups, businesses, commercial groups, etc. If you're interested also in more tips and things, folks, around portfolios, the 2 sessions that we did last cycle on how to build a portfolio for public art, you can watch those recordings at any time. And there's a lot of really great tips for folks who are wanting to apply on how to build a portfolio, what to put in, what's maybe not a good idea to put in. So just a little plug. For those. There was a question about your background that we kind of covered at the beginning, so I'm not going to open that up again right this second, but just to also say if you missed some of tonight's session, you can watch the recording when it's captured and put up on the LA County website. That won't be immediately, but we'll let folks know when that does happen. So I think with that, we are done with the Q&A part for tonight. Pat or Susan, are there any final things that either of you would like to share?
Oh, I would just say it was really an honor to be here tonight, and I hope that I gave the people listening some good insights on to how to further their practice. I think LA is a great city for public art, and it seems like there's a lot more open doors for people with all levels of experience there than there are in a lot of other places. So I just think it's great to help support that as well. So thank you so much for having me.
Yeah. Summer, if you can go to the next slide for me, please. Just a reminder, we are always open to hearing your feedback on these sessions. We have several more coming up. If there are things that you didn't catch or you have questions, please feel free to always email us at info@dysonwomack.com. We want to hear from you and make sure that these meetings and these workshops are as useful for you as possible. You can also always follow us at Dyson Womack on Instagram to learn more about the upcoming sessions. And then next to the last slide, I think is just a reminder again, we'll be back on January 21st with our next session. And with that, I just want to say thank you guys for showing up tonight, for helping to kick off a really great start to the Cycle 2 PAiD professional development workshops. And thank you, Pat, for joining us.
My pleasure.
Absolutely. Okay. I think we're good. We're going to sign off. Good night, everyone. Susan, thank you again.
Thank you.